many of you know that this story was originally a book before it was a bunch of movies? And it's a very curious story, too. Originally starting as Alice's Adventures Underground, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was written by Lewis Carroll. He originally told his story orally and was encouraged to write it down, so that's what he did, and it was published in November 1865. The book later got a sequel called Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, which I do intend to review at a later date. Now this story is a bit odd. Just keep that in mind as we progress through the story, as there's not really a reason as to why things happen, things just happen. I'll get more into that later. Anyway, the story begins with Alice and her older sister sitting near a riverbank. Alice is very bored, but then a white rabbit passes by claiming to be late. Alice follows the white rabbit into a rabbit hole and falls for hours. Luckily, she lands safely inside a room with a table. There's a lot of doors here and only one key. The key only fits inside a tiny little door, which leads into a magnificent garden. Alice can't fit inside, but she finds a bottle labeled Drink Me. She drinks it and shrinks small enough to fit inside the door, but she left the key back on top of the table and can't reach it. Then a cake appears labeled Eat Me. Alice eats the cake and grows way beyond her original size. Well, now she's cramped in this room and begins to cry. The white rabbit was actually passing by and flees in terror. Alice picks up the gloves and the fan that the white rabbit had. She begins to fan herself and ends up shrinking back down, but now we have another problem. She really shouldn't have cried so much. Now she's swimming in a pool of her own tears. Alice meets a few animals while swimming around, and they manage to get onto a bank. They decide that a caucus race is the way to dry off, and so they do it. No one really wins in a caucus race. Okay, well, they all do. Now, this is normally where you'd expect Alice to befriend the animals, but she can't seem to stop talking about her cat. Now, these are small animals, and not animals you should be talking about cats to. The animals run away from Alice at the mention of her cat, leaving her alone. Alice starts wandering around and ends up finding the white rabbit again. The white rabbit mistakes her for his maid and orders her to retrieve his gloves and fan in his house. Alice goes into the house to get them, but she finds another bottle. She drinks it and grows far too large to be contained inside the house. The white rabbit summons other animals to get her out, but their many methods don't work. What ends up working is throwing cakes into the house along with pebbles. Alice eats one of the cakes and shrinks back down. Alice manages to get out of the house and runs away from the animals who charge at her. She also runs past a large dog into the forest. In the forest is this smoking caterpillar sitting on a mushroom. Now, throughout the story, Alice has been having a bit of an existential crisis since everything happening around her shouldn't be happening to her. So therefore, she must have changed into someone else. She explains all of this to the caterpillar and tries to confirm this by attempting to recite a poem. The caterpillar isn't much help, except he tells Alice that one side of the mushroom will make her grow, while the other side will make her shrink. So Alice takes off a piece from both sides and tests them out until she is the right size. Alice continues to wander around and eventually finds the home of the Duchess, the owner of the Cheshire Cat. The Duchess can't be bothered to care for her baby, so she hands the baby over to Alice. Alice begins wandering again with the baby, which later turns into a piglet. Alice releases the piglet into the woods. She comes to a crossroads where she meets the Cheshire Cat. He tells her where each path leads, then he disappears. Alice thinks it'd be more interesting to see the March Hare, so she goes there. The Mad Hatter is already there as well. The Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and Dormouse are having a tea party. It's always tea time to the Hatter because he tried to kill time. Alice doesn't like conversing with the Hatter and March Hare and decides to leave. Alice eventually finds a door in a tree and it leads back to the room where she started. She takes the right steps to open up the small door and is finally able to enter the garden. The garden is actually a croquet court for the Queen of Hearts, ruler of all playing cards. The gardeners had been trying to paint the white roses red, but the Queen pops in to yell at them. She decides to play croquet with Alice. This is a very different kind of croquet, involving hedgehogs and flamingos, with the playing card soldiers as the hoops. The Cheshire Cat appears mid-game, and Alice talks to him, but that attracts the attention of everyone else. The Queen orders the cat to be beheaded, but the cat appeared as just a head. So, how's that going to work? Alice tells the Queen that the cat belongs to the Duchess, so the Queen lets her out of prison. The Duchess begins to talk about finding morals and everything, which is annoying the Queen. The Queen threatens to sentence the Duchess to execution unless she leaves, and so the Duchess leaves. After playing more of the game, the Queen guides Alice to a griffin, who then guides her to the Mock Turtle. The griffin and the Mock Turtle dance the Lobster Quadrille. Alice tries to recite another poem, but it doesn't get it right. Alice wishes for the Mock Turtle to sing, and so he does, but Alice can't stay long as the Griffin takes her to a trial. The Knave of Hearts is accused of stealing the Queen's tarts. The King of Hearts is the judge, and the jury is full of the animals that Alice has met along the way. As the trial continues down its silly path, Alice starts to grow larger and larger. The king insists that Alice leave due to her size, but she refuses. The queen orders her beheading. Alice isn't afraid of a bunch of playing cards, but as they swarm her, she wakes up. Alice is woken up by her sister. Apparently the cards that were swarming Alice were only leaves falling from a tree. Her whole journey was a dream. Alice continues to imagine what just happened. And that's how the story ends. Honestly, I think analyzing the story is a bit hard since a lot of the references and symbols could be left up to interpretation, but I will tell you what I think. Let me start with Alice as a character. She questions everything going on around her, which can be quite annoying as she interrupts the characters in the middle of their tales. Although, what I find the most fascinating is how she learns to find herself. She doesn't believe herself to be Alice after she realizes she can't remember what she's learned in the events happening around her. She even tells those she meets that she doesn't know who she is, but later in the book, she starts to introduce herself as Alice with confidence. Despite all the wacky things going on around her, she's able to learn who she is. I also feel that a common theme is the importance of imagination. Wonderland is a world with rules that aren't like those of our world. Everything just happens on its own. It's strange to us, but normal to those in that world. Despite the whole experience being a dream, Alice still thinks about that mysterious world she visited in the end. Even though it had its scary parts, it was still amazing to her. Now I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the story. I mentioned before that the story feels like stuff just happens for seemingly no reason other than the world's strange rules. But then I thought about it some more and realized that most fairy tales are built that way. Things just happen to the protagonist in some cases. The world around Alice shifts all the time. I can see where L. Frank Baum got his inspiration for The Wizard of Oz. They have very similar fairy tale vibes about them. Overall, this was an interesting story. While it does feel all over the place, I think that's how it's meant to be written. I can definitely see why it's still remembered today. I'd recommend this book for ages 6 and up. While there may be 1 or 2 moments that will be difficult for young readers to understand, most of it is very simple to pick up, and some bigger words are explained to the reader. Plus, the illustrations will help the reader see the world of Wonderland. Now, this book has many adaptations. There were 2 silent shorts and 1 silent film in the early 1900s, there was 1 live-action film in 1931, and while there were many others over the years, I'm sure you're familiar with the animated Disney film from 1951, which adapted parts of this book and its sequel, Through the Looking Glass. There's also the live-action Tim Burton films from 2010 and 2016. And there are even more adaptations of this book on the way! Yeah, I don't see this story being forgotten anytime soon. I hope all of you get a chance to read this and enjoy it. I think it would be a fun book for young readers. Have a happy beginning of summer, everyone! Happy reading!